Hello and welcome, this is Synoptic and I will be your commentator today. This is a 2v2 matchmaking ranked battle on Rivertown, and we're up against, at the time, I think, #1 ranking in the world. Ooh, there's some proof with a picture. Yeah, you look at that, man. That's so pro with them numbers, man, and that somewhat broken system. Rank doesn't mean anything to me. It never really did in any of the Total War games. I think in Empire and Napoleon we only had low ranks. Most people did. They just stopped caring at around 4 or 5 stars. But nowadays we have this ladder system, in which doesn't really reveal much. In the recent patch there was a change, and if your opponents don't connect properly or they disconnect, you accumulate a loss, which is very nice. And I think that drove many people to do classic battles and just standard list battles because they don't want to hurt their numbers now. On 2 occasions me and Blonkers have had that happen to us. So we had a string of victories and then 2 losses because our opponents have crap computers or they're just raged. So hopefully maybe they will remove that, although I'm not too sure, seeming as it's now relatively late in the life of the game. For simplicity purposes, I will mention our opponents as black and maroon, or red. Black will be against me, and has actually got me in the worst position I could ever want. So I'm just going to be harassing and then wheeling backwards. Half my army is on the hill with Blonkers, and he's essentially just broken and cut it off. They're both walking into that bottleneck, red and black, which is basically black's side. They're not going into the main area where the perks are, those points. Now let's talk about armies. Red has the weirdest one by far. He has no cavalry, he has a wall of spears, all highly vetted, 3 bowmonks, 2 matchlocks, and 4 infantry, most likely lone swords. My opponent in black is the hard counter to mine. He's got this wall of Yari-Ashigaru and 3 highly vetted monk matchlocks. I think the rest are just spears and lone swords. He's got some cavalry too. So right now I am wedged off with a third of my army. I can't really use them, and that really sucks for an army like mine. Mine is quite brittle, and I need to use all my cavalry at once to survive. As he's moving forward, Blonkers distracts him on the left side, whereas I hit him on the opposite side. So technically he can't watch both, and I am able to connect with my cavalry, doing a fair bit of damage on those matchlocks. Black still continues to move forward. He is well aware that my army is weakened by the fact that it's split into 2. Blonkers initiates his attack with a Naginata cavalry strike on his moving opponent. However, his opponent is very quick to react. He stops his army, aims his matchlocks, fires into the cavalry. Goodbye, cavalry. Regardless of this fast loss, it has bought Blonkers some time. He's able to move the majority of his army within striking range. The majority of Blonkers' army consists of matchlocks. He's got about 6 of them, so by the time he gets in, he's going to do a lot of damage morale-wise and casualty. Black continues to chase as I fall back. I cannot counter his army until my army reunites. Red is stationed on top of this slight hill. His matchlocks would have a hard time shooting anything relatively close. He does take out a Yari-Ashigaru, although now these matchlocks is beginning to get in range, and you see 3 cavalry of Blonkers going into the rear. There is a significant gap between black and red now. They're no longer unified as they once were. Here in the back you can also see my cavalry trying to get to my army. After the initial volleys, Blonkers then moves in his infantry to strike from the front, coupled with the standard fight from his general. In the rear, Blonkers uses 3 cavalry to hit 1 spear unit. Take note, this entire wall is using spear wall formation, making it very difficult. However, they aren't good enough to stop 3 cavalry from busting through. They then reach the general, who is also using standard fight. This results in a cascading effect. All of the spears then move into the middle to try and take out the threat. Generally speaking, being very quick to use your units to counter any problem is a good solution to any issue. However, all these units are now in a big ball. Essentially, this has resulted in a big shooting gallery for Blonkers. During Blonkers' strike, I was able to get my cavalry down to the vicinity of my fight. However, my infantry is still far away due to their slow movement speed, whereas Black was continuing to harass me. His right side was hitting my left very hard. He was able to catch some of my other cavalry, shooting me with matchlocks. In most Total War games, the box is a weak formation, however this one could be used quite effectively. It would do fairly well against infantry-based armies, where spears would take the brunt of any missile damage, whereas the bowmonks would clean anything up. Any close-range attacks from cavalry could easily be handled by the matchlocks, as seen earlier. With the fall of his teammate, Black is then pushed to rush me head-on, and that is the biggest weakness of my army. I only have 3 katanas to protect my matchlocks, where I have 3 matchlocks and only 2 cavalry on the left side. I'm able to take out 1 matchlock on that left, whereas his infantry on the same side annihilate mine. My 2 katanas are still trying to get there. I have 2 cavalry, they were blocked off by a fairly large amount of spears. The best counter for me would then be to run away from this general area. He's right next to the cliff. I'm unable to do any flanking charges with my cavalry. The 3 cav that I had with Blancas at the start were basically useless for quite some time, as they were all blocked off by spears. With no flank on the left and a woodland to the right, I can't do much else. Also, considering the fact that the middle is all water, it would be very hard for me to reinforce. So going back to what I said at the start, this is the worst position I could have possibly fought in. I would and should have fell back further. However, as I saw Blanca's army there, I did decide to just hold and attack. So I had 2 katanas and 2 matchlocks on the left side. They all got destroyed. I had that cavalry there as well. It got shot up to pieces. My right side was reinforced successfully and it survived. Here are my 2 katanas now that were slowed down and basically held back by the geography of the map. And at this point there's nothing much Black can do. He was unsuccessful in destroying my army. I still have a remainder of it, and in the meantime Blancas was able to reinforce, whereas in his fight he was unable to help his teammate, who got hit quite heavily from matchlock fire and a general assault. In summation of my fight, I had the impression of holding an army which excelled in frontal assaults in an area where there was limited mobility, and those longswords and matchlocks would roll my left side, my right barely held with reinforcing remaining forces of my army, and a further remaining 2 katanas, about 2/5 of my infantry force, would then come down and then assist Blanca's reinforcement. So Black was never able to get out of the water. Initially the water was advantageous for him, as my cavalry couldn't do much. I couldn't go around the water, and it was either go through water or go through woodland. So my attacks were quite weak in the rear assaults. So ultimately, in trying to gain a positional advantage against my army, which relies on maneuver, he is in a positional disadvantage in Blanca's army, which excels in firepower. Now, to conclude that battle, it essentially involved a lot of hard counters. There was a maneuvering army, mine, which was then held in a bottleneck and just constantly harassed until it just got locked down. Whereas on the other side, there was a strong defensive army, which was then tackled by a very swift army. So I hope you enjoyed. GG to all the players, thanks for watching, and this picture is a nightmare for anyone who's already seen it. Once you see that second counter go to 0, you have lost a game, and that really sucks. And I really do hope they fix it relatively soon, but who knows. GG, see ya.